Hey kids, it's Jurassic James, and that's Jurassic James Explains. We're looking at Sinotyrannus. So again, I see people all the time in Target and Walmart walking around and saying, Sinotyrannus, what is that? It's a real thing, trust me. So again, this is the only type toy of this animal in the world right now that I'm aware of. So here we are. Same rules apply. I'm going to take my official Jurassic James scissors and free the beast. Now, if I remember correctly, the larger price point models. Oh, never mind. The feet are usually attached to the bottom, but never mind. This is way easier than I thought it'd be. So Sinotyrannus, first and foremost, if you say the name Sino, Sino means Chinese. So if a dinosaur is named Sino something, it's probably from China. Now, you may have heard of the famous Liaoning, China. I mention it a lot sometimes. So basically, it's the part of China that's right over North Korea. It's essentially the province. And it's known for its feathered dinosaurs. Particularly in 1996, they found Sinotyrannus, this guy, Sino, Chinese, saurus, lizard, reptile, opteryx, wing or feathers, this little guy here. Really important fossil. So Sinotyrannus is a tyrannosaur from China, basically. Now, first and foremost, I'm going to point out, as far as parts found, they found part of the lower jaw, some vertebra, other body bones. They didn't find this part here. I'm going to go over that in a minute. But as far as a toy goes, you have first and foremost your DNA code thing. That's really important to kids. If I push, there's two buttons here in the back. So if I push this button, it turns like this. If I push the other button, it moves the tail. If I push both, the head and tail move. Because children, I thought it roared. Didn't it roar? Huh, it doesn't roar. Are you sure? It roared. Okay. So the ones that are smaller roar. The ones that are smaller and more expensive roar. Okay, cool. So first and foremost, I'm going to point out, given that they don't have the hands, I can't say it didn't have 3 fingers. I will tell you this, that given where it fits in the family tree, it probably did. So as what's called a basal tyrannosaur, the term, we don't use the word primitive usually because there's a lot of human stuff going on there. Basal, B-A-S-A-L, basal, it's pretty much the earlier form of something else. I can tell you this, that primitive implies that, oh, it's a simple thing. But remember, when it lived in the early Cretaceous period, T-Rex is not born yet, Allosaurus is extinct, so it is the most advanced animal of its time, basically. So that's one reason I can say we use basal instead of primitive. But when you compare it to a Tyrannosaurus Rex from later times, yeah, it's primitive. But before that, before those animals existed, this was just, whatever car that's really popular right now, one day will be old, children. So as far as major parts, I mean, it's to be assumed that it has 3 toes in the front and a little dew claws on the side here that turn backwards like that. It's a very muscular looking figure. I do think the spikes here are speculative. Again, if you only have a fragmented skeleton, here we are. Now, as far as its design and family tree, so of course in Jurassic World we know Tyrannosaurus Rex, or Rexy as she's often called. So Tyrannosaurus Rex pretty much is one of the last of the Tyrannosaurs, actually, later Tyrannosaurs. In North America, if you go to Asia, they have a cousin called Tarbosaurus, which I think I did a video on, I believe I did. And so Tyrannosaurus is a relative called Albertosaurus we have here. So these are some of the larger, later Tyrannosaurs, the ones we know from movies, TV, pop culture, other Jurassic James videos, maybe. So Sinotyrannus is actually in a different branch of the Tyrannosaur family. So animals that you would associate with it more would be, in the Jurassic World line, the Proceratosaurus. I mentioned this before in a previous video, that Proceratosaurus is an animal that when they first found it in England, it had this little nose horn here, and it was very similar to Ceratosaurus, which is found in North America. And they're like, well, it's older, it's more primitive, maybe it's a Proceratosaurus. We now know it's actually closer to the Tyrannosaur family than the Ceratosaur family, so hooray. Based on, DNA testing. No, I'm kidding. It's actually the morphology. So for paleontologists, when studying animals older than Ice Age stuff, I wouldn't say DNA is Ice Age available, but dinosaur bones and dinosaur things, the bones have been replaced by minerals. So you can't extract DNA because the DNA has been replaced by minerals, right? So one thing to point out here is that this is the Jurassic World Proceratosaurus. This is who are you? Let's see, you are... Who made you, actually? Better question. Collect A. So it's a Collect A Protoceratosaurus. I love okay. In my opinion, the feet are smaller because theropods had relatively small feet. These Jurassic World toys have these big feet for balancing. The tail is absolutely upsetting. I'll never stop complaining about this. But the point is, well, you say, why does it matter so much? Look, it can't stand. It doesn't stand. It does not stand. If you balance it certain ways, no. Maybe it's a different angle of the table. Okay, it does stand this one way. But overall, it doesn't stand. The point is, this is a beautiful figure. I like the way the crest and skull looks. This is not a video about it. But the idea is that this is a nice figure, but this is the one we're comparing it to. There's also a tyrannosaur relative called Guanlong from China, one of the earliest tyrannosaurs known. So our friend Sinoceraptorix falls in with these guys. These, not so much these guys. They're a more advanced branch. But there's a guy called Sinotyrannus who is really famous, and honestly, I'm not surprised. I am surprised and interested why they didn't make a figure of Sinotyrannus. Sinotyrannus is a tyrannosaurid from Liaoning, China as well, and this guy has the longest feathers of, actually it's one of the biggest predatory dinosaurs that we have feathers of. And it's kind of a big deal. I mean, kids in my classes are saying Sinotyrannus, they know what it is, so it's out there. So I'm surprised they didn't make this figure, they made that one instead, but maybe they were going for something different. But here's the thing, as far as time goes, in Liaoning, there are two, well, in my observation today, there are two functions. Now, two formations. So I can't remember the name properly because I have trouble saying it. But Sinotyrannus is from the, it's spelled Jiufotang. So Fang formation. So it lives with Microraptor. You remember Microraptor with the double wings thing going on there? Look at that guy right there. Look at, he's appreciate him. And then that lives with Psittacosaurus, which everyone in early stages of China sees Psittacosaurus. They are an extremely successful species. People say survival of the fittest, and they think, oh, that means you're the strongest, the fastest, the smartest. No, in the fossil record, in evolution, the fittest has the most kids. If you have more offspring and you're more spread out, that's the fittest. It's not fast, strong, or smart, because these weren't very smart from my understanding, compared to other predators. So the idea here is that this animal, Psittacosaurus, is all over the place. So these are two toys that we know it lived with. Now when you hear Liaoning China, you think of other animals. You're thinking, wait a minute, what about the early tyrannosaur named Dilong? What about Sinotyrannus? What about the early therizinosaur, Biepisaurus? And what about, again, Psittacosaurus, the triumphant return? There's also, there it is. It's named Sinoceraptor. I just mentioned this guy. So these guys are from the, wait for it, it's spelled Y-I-X-I-A-N, Ixenian formation. And so this formation is over there. So what I'm saying is, in looking in the rock unit, you see all these guys together, and these guys are in the rock unit right before it. Which implies in the fossil record that one, Psittacosaurus survives that change in environment, changing conditions, and that this guy takes on the role that Sinotyrannus held. Because these are not to scale for the most part. Sinotyrannus is pretty big, but this guy's like estimated to be about 30 to 33 feet long. So that's like Alberta size, almost Albertosaurus size. So it's a pretty big tyrannosaur for the early Cretaceous. Because you have to remember, early tyrannosaurs found were like D-long, which are like 5 feet long. They're pretty tall. When I do field trips to Dinosaur Park in Bastrop, they have a D-long there. It's like that tall. Then you get this animal's like 30 feet long. You're like, whoa, what's going on with that guy, right? So, and people often think that Microraptor lived with like in this formation with these guys. It's actually a Microraptor relative called Graciraptor who lived with them. Microraptor itself lived with this guy, right? So, I mentioned earlier we found the jaw, some vertebrae, other bones in the body, but this crest, right? Because I was trying to find a paper saying where's the skull or the cranium, the top of the skull, and they didn't really have it. And so the idea is if you see Proceratosaurus and you see Guanlong, and these are Tyrannosaur relatives, and we have enough of its skeleton to say it's a Tyrannosaur relative, the assumption is it must have had some kind of facial structure, basically, right? But then I go, well, how do you know? Because you look over here and you see D-long and Sinotyrannus, and they really don't show those features, or at least the parts we have. So it's kind of a mystery there. But it's not out of the question, but I wouldn't be like, that's how it looks for sure, because we don't know. We're looking at its relatives and saying, well, these are features we see. The later Tyrannosaurs clearly get rid of the nose and face features. They usually have more things with their eyes, like Albertosaurus has a little eye crest right before the on the frontal. And of course Tyrannosaurus Rex has these big embossed areas here for the eye. So we don't know what this guy had exactly, but it is an interesting animal nevertheless. So if you go to the store and you see one, it is a real thing. I just think it's weird that it just wags its tail and does like that. But again, I think most of the figures from earlier on like snap and bite, so that's why they're doing this. But Sinotyrannus is a real thing, so I'm hoping to find some Sinotyrannus non-Jurassic World figures, but also because it's a fragmented, unknown animal that might I find it. So there we go with that idea. So, but anyway, but overall, I'm still happy with it. It's a really interesting animal. I like it a lot. And again, my biggest thing with these Jurassic World figures is they're not scientifically accurate. I'm sorry to tell you that, but they are fun to see representation of different species, even though they're really off. And I'd much rather get more of these obscure species with weird features than more hybrids. So I you know, pick your poison kind of thing. It's like your parents would say, pick your own punishment. Do you want to do this or this? It's like, well, they're both awful, but at least this is a better of the awful, you know. Tail's kind of small. I mean, I like little just official things that they have like this. It's like, I'm not sure if it's supposed to be feathers, but this little ridge of skin in the back, and it kind of looks like the right here. And then the tail has this little thing going on here. So I'm not sure what that is. It's supposed to be, but it's really neat. Giving them the spines and the neural spines here that are higher, and then having them down here on the throat. Again, nothing shows that I'm aware of, but it's just cool looking. So good for them. But don't think you're going to go to the museum and see this picture on the wall of looking like this, right? Anyway, this is Sinotyrannus. I hope you enjoyed the video. Any comments, like, subscribe below, all the things that YouTube wants to do. The YouTube algorithm is eating that stuff. Please tell me. And thank you very much. I'll see you guys next week.